Hi, welcome to the Poultry Keepers Podcast. I'm Rip Stalvey, and together with Mandolin Royal and John Gunnerman, we're your co hosts for this show, and it's our mission to help you have a happy, healthy, and productive flock. Hello, Poultry Keepers Podcast listeners. We haven't really talked about us, what we're doing, in a good long time. Mandelin's just started a job. She's running hither and thither and trying to get all her birds going and everything done. Madeline, what's up with you lately?
I'm neck deep into a feed trial where I'm growing out, it's like 55 chicks now. And we're looking to find the FCR of how much feed does it take to bring these birds up to market age. And right after I started that trial, I started back to work. Thankfully, I'm part-time now because it was way too much to keep track of. But now I'm refocused, recentered, and everything is going smoothly there. I kept hatching, and now I have every single brooder full.
Folks,
I'm
if
like,
you're not sure what she's talking about when she said FCR, it is the feed conversion ratio.
yes, very important data to know if you're going to do anything with market birds.
Are your birds laying well this time of year? They should. I'm thinking they probably should be, but
Most of them are giving me the 6 eggs a week that I would like them to do, but I have noticed that in my older lady pen, there's a couple slackers in there. They're running at like 50% production, and I'll have to check and see if it's an obesity problem because with the American breast, they can get a little too fat in time. And I'll probably get in there and find the worst hen in the pen and processor, see what's going on, and if I need to do a molt ration on a couple of them and split that pen up to bring the better ones back into production.
How
Think
old
it's,
are these? How old are these birds?
some of them are up to 3, 4 years old. I
Okay,
called
so if
out
they
the
haven't
dry.
been through a good hard
well,
molt yet, probably need to shed some internal fat to get back into laying trim.
They're definitely shaped like bowling balls.
but,
Okay,
but really,
yeah,
if you stop and think about it, a 3 or 4 year old hen laying at a 50% rate, that's not all that
I'm
bad.
I'd be happy with that, even with a good hard molt.
Normally, they'll take longer breaks as they get older for me, but when they are in active lay, it's still that 5, 6 eggs a week. They just do that. They just don't do it for as long of a period of time
Okay,
before they take another little break.
Gotcha.
sure.
John, I know you've been
Woo!
mobilized here for a little while.
It's been a spring. In the middle of doing a classroom hatch at the preschool where I chef and do farm to preschool education at, I had a rather unfortunate incident, something called a trimollar fracture of my right. But on to the important things is I'm going to be non-weight bearing on my right foot I'm 6 weeks in, and my surgeon says that I can start thinking about weight bearing in another 6 to 8 weeks. Wheelchair for 6 months minimum. So we had to make some serious changes around the farm.
Wheelchair during mud season is a
Well,
complication.
we were still snowing here when this happened. I slipped on the ice. It was nobody's fault but my own for not having my little ice grippies on the bottom of my feet. Things happen. We've since had a 2+ foot snowstorm and a 3 foot snowstorm. We're just now getting into spring and mud season. So luckily, the VA has been hugely supportive of my agricultural and other endeavors, and they fit me for a new wheelchair, coming with big fat mud tires, so I could maybe continue chickening and not get quagmired in the mud. When all this happened, I reached out to some folks who were in line to do some testing for me on my breeding projects and said, "Hey, would you be interested in a whole pile of really nice Chanticleers?" And luckily, one of our listeners, Esther Feathers, was very interested, and she made the drive all the way up from New Hampshire and basically took all my current stock back home with her. And it's been so amazing to watch them grow out vicariously through her and watch their development. And they're tracking just the way I would expect them to. But
Good.
to but to keep the breeding program moving forward, I can't take a year off because I know if I take a year off, it's going to set me back a year or three. So we're still working with somewhat smaller hatch. I think total was 100 egg set that we're keeping to sort through. And we're growing those out right now. Everybody's in the barn. They're doing well, trying to mitigate the challenges of how to get them out to pasture while the pasture is wet and I'm in a wheelchair. So they'll probably stay in the barn for a little while longer. We've got a nice hatching time brooder and grow out pen cage set up for them to make it easier for me to manage from a wheelchair. A lot of it's just been adapting to life from a seated position and keeping the breeding program moving forward. We have this responsibility to our birds to feed them and give them the best possible care despite our challenges. And I do take that responsibility heavily. And I was grateful that somebody was able to step up and take the birds that I wasn't able to care for at the time. And I think that's important, is to have a backup plan for catastrophic emergencies. We
Well,
just weren't capable of caring for these birds, and somebody needed to do that, or I needed to put them down, and that would have been incredibly inhumane.
I think another aspect of Esther having your birds is that's another satellite flock of your genetics should you suffer a catastrophic loss.
Yeah, definitely. I call them my seed flocks when I set up local people
Mhm.
with them. And with the only
Sure.
stipulation that you got to keep that line pure so that they can keep moving forward from where they are rather than interrupting them with a line cross and resetting the whole thing. Because that turns into a 3 to 5 year project every time you do that.
Sure. And now I have an outlet for, so I grew out these 60 plus birds, and I have more than I can keep that are keeper quality. They're going to be first on my list as,
Yeah,
hey,
don't turn it out
I've
too
got
much.
some great birds that I can't keep. Do you want them? And if they don't want them, I've got people further down the line. But I think it's all about when you have great quality genetics and people that are interested in putting forth the effort and expense to encourage them as much as possible. And it becomes a mutually beneficial arrangement. If I need to reach back for some of my genetics, I know they're available. If they have a problem, I can give them a rooster or send them a couple of hens and keep our lines strong. And the added bonus is they're pretty close to my upstream breeder geographically. I haven't made the introduction yet, but I believe they're about an hour apart. Whereas
So
we're,
you're pretty well into setting up a little community network up there in Upper East.
yes, between New Hampshire and Vermont, we're starting to build a pretty strong following of Chanticleers. And we are to get an interest in the American Bress. I've met another Chanticleer breeder who said that they would be very interested in trying to do a Bress Chanticleer cross.
That's going pretty okay for the F1, the small batch, 11 chicks I just sorted through. And half of them were feeling absolutely fantastic. And these are neat to grow out, and seeing where they favor which breed is really interesting. And I don't see much breast on the outside, but I feel it on the inside. So
Well,
that'll
that's
be
where it
good.
counts.
Sure, sure. And ultimately on the plate and on the spreadsheet, I've got a couple of breasts that I've hatched out from eggs of yours, and they're doing great. I deliberately put them in with a batch of Chanticleer eggs, and as far as the breasts, no, they're not Chanticleers. In
Well, they're
fact,
picking up that rounded shape yet?
they are, even at this age, the breasts are distinctly larger, and the blue feet is a dead giveaway, as well as the combs are starting to come in. They're at such a cute age. They're like 2.5 weeks, so they're in that awkward, I call it the teenager gangly phase.
Oh, it gets worse from here.
Oh yeah, I know. But I love this when they're just starting that molt and getting ready to get their hard feathers in.
And if there's a male, you ought to start seeing a little pink comb sprouting up any day now.
That's what I'm looking at the what we have, trying to figure out who they are.
They'll tell you quicker than the Chanticleers do.
Oh, months quicker.
I'm very envious. I'm sitting here, I'm listening to Mandy talk about all the breasts she's raising. I'm listening to John talk about what he's up to. And I'm sitting down here in Florida, and I learned a long time ago that it's best not to hatch my reds in the spring of the year because you hatch them in February, March, April. They come out of the brooder and they're sitting out there in the hot weather and they just sit there. They don't eat much. They don't grow much. So by hatching in October, I can take advantage of the cool weather. And by the time we start to get hot temperatures, they're pretty much mature at that part. But I'll be honest with you. I've got my females are laying, and it's paining me greatly not to be putting those eggs in the incubator.
Well, you could sneak a couple in.
Rip, do you think there? Here's an interesting experiment just popped into my head. Here's a squirrel hole. A batch raised in the spring versus a batch raised in the fall. How would they express differently based on just the climate that they're being raised in? The difference between a summer brood and a winter brood, so to speak. And we've talked about comb differences, but just overall, I've noticed birds raised in heat and humidity, they just don't put on weight as fast. They're very lethargic.
They don't. Now,
Could that over a period of several generations be mitigated by local adaptation?
I haven't seen it happen yet, John.
Okay.
At least here in the Southeast, and I know quite a few red breeders, and we all get together and we mumble and gripe about the hot weather and what it does to our birds. And we take the necessary steps to get the air moving, plenty of
Sure.
shade, cool water, the whole 9 yards. But they just, and honestly, I wondered if it's not something to do with their dark coloration.
They're going to absorb a lot more
Oh yeah,
heat from the sun.
Yeah.
But see, to me, this highlights the importance of having local knowledge to share with people who have been doing this for a while. You just said in your area, everybody mumbles and grumbles about it, and you have to hatch in the fall. For a new poultry keeper who's online going, yeah, spring is the time to hatch, they may be setting
Maybe
themselves
not.
up.
maybe not.
Get in touch with the local people and find out what does well in your area and when it does well in your area. The right bird in the right place at the right time.
What's the rate of lay? And if they're laying well now, how many of them are still laying well once you get to October or September, that time frame? Because I filter my hens again. If they're not still laying in the fall, I cycle them back out. So you might actually be looking at finding your better producing females by waiting until that time of year for the ones who are still in active lay at that time.
Madeline, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to monitor their production. And if I see it starting to taper off July, August, whatever, I may go ahead and put them through a molt. So they'll be coming back into production when I want the egg.
Mhm.
Oh, so you can schedule it. Okay.
And you're coming up on just the right age too.
Yeah.
Where you want to pull your breeders from.
They will be a little over a year old.
Just
Well,
coming out of their
they'll-
first molt.
They'll be older than that. They'll probably be 15, 16 months old, something like that.
Perfect.
So they've been around the calendar once. They've shown you what they've got.
And on the other side of that coin is that's pretty good timing. It works well for showing birds because you get them through the summer and they molt, they do their thing. Most of our shows down here are in the fall and winter. And if you're hatching them January, February, March, it's hard to have them and keep them in show condition for our fall show. But by delaying the hatching, that helps me overcome that a little bit. Not that I'm able to get out and show much anymore, but old habits are still hard for me to break.
Does your area have a big Future Farmers of America or 4-H program?
We do, but they have not been very active in poultry. I have tried to cultivate that for a number of years.
Yes. I've found a
also-
couple of youngsters here that are interested and have seeded them with some of my Chanticleer every year for the past couple of years.
I think it has as much to do with the ag teacher as anything else. Most of our ag teachers down here are either into row crop, citrus production, or beef cattle. Is what it is. I know you get out in the Midwest, there's a lot of FFA and 4-H kids into poultry out there. And Mandy, up in your area, a tremendous FFA program up there.
Yeah, we have a lot of little poultry groups, and I've set up a couple of 4-H kids. And that's been neat because when the judges get their hands on the birds, they're like, oh, wow, there's meat on this bird.
Well, that's exactly right.
So we'll see how that goes. I'd love to see a sustainable poultry category when they get together for their little shows and stuff. Because right now it's more of your show type birds or showmanship or the commercial hybrids.
Yeah, market birds.
I was thinking maybe a crazy, but a heritage poultry or dual purpose poultry show where you actually have to submit your egg production and meat production records along with the birds that you're showing. Say, this is what I kept. This is the rest of their cohort. This is their feed conversion ratio. This is their rate of lay. These birds produce. They're not just pretty.
John, back when standard bred poultry was the commercial birds, they used to do that. There were egg shows, there were carcass shows, there were, of course, the live bird shows, but there were even shows for baby chicks. So they used to do a lot of that. And it, with the advent of the commercial poultry industry, some of that kind of got shot in the foot. I agree with you. It'd be cool. It'd be fun.
In some level of engagement. I'm always thinking when I'm able to get back to farmer's market, bringing one of those little pack and play portable cribs and putting a hen and a couple of 2 or 3 week old chicks in that pack and play next to my trailer, just to have some nice interaction. People walking by, families walking by. It's cuteness. It's cool. It's nature. It draws customers into my booth. Well, I'll take that.
I wonder what the participation could actually be, because one thing I've realized by doing this feed trial is doing the data collection. You have to set that as a priority and you can't skip a day. It's a special kind of tedium that I'm enjoying, but I don't know that it's for everyone.
You're probably right. It takes a huge amount of commitment
Oh,
to
for what you're doing. Yes.
for even modest numbers for my own use would take a whole lot of commitment as it would for anybody else. And what you're doing is you're comparing a couple of different lines of breasts and a couple of different types of feed and all that. It's takes a lot of dedication to pull one of those off.
Well, I
But if
split
you,
it up as best I could. And then my next round is going to be crumble feed versus the Kraut Creek milled feed on the same genetic pool.
splitting a hatch in half, I got goosebumps when I
Yeah.
heard you mention that on your YouTube video. It's like that right there. Yes.
Excited about round two.
I would be interested to see what that revealed.
Side by side. That's beautiful. Yeah. Great stuff. But if people don't know within 2 or 3 bags of feed per year what it costs to keep their chickens, it's something you should look into.
It's very revealing. And I know Mandy hadn't been into her feed trials probably enough to know. But when I switched from over the counter feeds at the big box stores, custom milled feed, I'd have to go back and look it up. Okay. But my feed consumption dropped 20 to 25% from
I
what it
believe,
was over the big box feeds.
I believe that based on my initial data, that probably going to prove to be true in my second round of trials.
Yeah, probably is.
I
Yeah.
started doing 2 things at the same time. I started using the Fertrell Breeders Supplement and NutriBalancer, as well as constant access to grit, as well as calcium. But grit is the most important part. And between those 2 things, I can't attribute it to any one thing. I'm looking at a 20% savings overall.
I
Uh,
noticed
I
their grit
I know
consumption
grit
dropped.
can be anywhere between 5 and 10% increase on its own just by adding that to commercial feed.
Their grit increased when I changed the feed type.
They will need more grit to
Yeah,
grind the
really.
whole grains. If a bird has a gizzard, it needs grit. It's essential to proper gizzard action and to get all the nutrients that you've already paid to put down the bird's beak extracted before it comes out the back end.
Yeah, it's true. And I've noticed almost a 50% increase in their grit consumption by switching to a milled feed. It was significant.
Now, describe what you mean by a milled feed, if you would, Mandy.
You can still see the ingredients that make it up because it's been ground down, and that grind varies by the age of the bird. So the chick starter was pretty powdery and they weren't sorting through it. They were clearing out that feeder as if
Yeah.
they knew it was good stuff. And it took me a couple of weeks to figure out exactly how much to give them every day to make sure they had 10% left at the end of the day. And there were a couple of times when they had it down to there wasn't even ducks left. And I'm like, oh, they would have eaten more. Oh, goodness. So that's why I'm going to do a couple more trials and get those numbers right to figure out what they actually want to have every day.
That uniform mash size is really important because the chickens, they're greedy buggers and they're going to take the biggest piece first, no matter what it is. Second priority is always corn and then anything else. So if they can't really sort, if everything's the same size, they're just going to hopefully go to town. Got some corn candy here and there to make them happy.
Yeah. I was a little surprised because it wasn't the first time I've used a milled feed. I tried the house blend of our local mill, and I ended up seeing some vitamin deficiencies. The eggs weren't as good as they were, and there was a clumping issue in the feeders I had. And I don't think I had kept them on it for longer than 5 weeks before I was like, I got to go back to what I was doing.
Mhm.
But this time, it's just a much better quality behind it. It smells better. It smells different. Just even though the style of feed was the same, the ingredient quality is different.
Yes.
So,
And you have a better nutritional profile because you actually have like a poultry nutritionist sent them the formula and said, make this.
I'm excited for when we have Jeff on to talk about this stuff because he's far more of an expert than I am. He's just my helper and nutritionist for this season, and he's telling me everything I do wrong or right. And having his insight during the process has been really invaluable. So I can't wait till we have him on the show.
So
that's
excited.
one thing I really like about Jeff. He'll be honest with you. He doesn't pull any punches. If you're doing something right, he'll let you know. And if you can improve something, he'll let you know about that too.
Yeah, he sure does. And he doesn't waste words on it either. He'll tell you in as few words as possible.
And he's been really helpful. He spotted things in pictures. He's like, hey, I know we're not talking about this, but what's going on in this back corner with this thing over here? I'm like, oh, that's this. You need to fix that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody who's been on site to so many commercial as well as backyard flocks, his knowledge just as a consultant is amazing.
And you want to be open to receiving that kind of criticism too. Like you don't ever want to feel defensive over it. You want to go into it with an open mind because that's when you're going to learn a lot more and the experience of others is really going to
Mhm.
become actionable into your program.
I've always been about process improvement and making things better for me and my birds and easier to manage. And especially now at these health challenges, that's become more and more important. So all these little incremental improvements that we make over the years, eventually I looked back and said, how did I end up where I am now in my husbandry practices? And it's just been this learning evolution over the past 8 years now. A lot of it's based on commercial level pastured poultry production, pushing up to 1,000 birds through a field every year, and now scaled back to home residential size. But all these things, it's a cumulative process. And if you look at where you are now, hopefully it's not where you were several years ago. And hopefully you're going to keep refining the process and making it easier and better for you and your birds.
Oh, speaking of which, I'm always looking at ways to increase our growing space because it's become really apparent over the years that you don't need that many breeding birds, but you want as much grow space as you can possibly get built. So we recently sold our pigs, and that frees up almost 2 acres that they very effectively destroyed. We're going to reseed it and level all that ground and prep it for running a fleet of tractors back there.
What are you going to reseed it with, Madeline?
I haven't decided yet, but I want it poultry friendly for sure. I want, incorporate some comfrey and some native grasses and really amp up the nutritional profile of that forage.
That's what I'm so envious of you guys. You live up where you can grow things that we can't grow down here. Just doesn't work, like clover. I would die to be able to grow clover down here. We can grow perennial peanuts, but we can't grow the forage radishes or anything like that down here.
We had an area of ground that we called the grocery store, and it's where we threw all of our seeds that we didn't use for our own garden starts. And it was just everything we had, we just chucked it over the fence and what took. And it was a really neat example of chaos gardening. And
It
we
is.
didn't harvest anything out of it for ourselves, but what took, and then later in the summer, we'd turn the pigs loose into it. Then they would eat absolutely everything because it wasn't a very large area, maybe 30 foot by 50 foot. Everything from corn, zucchini, squash, tomatoes, watermelon, cantaloupe, sunflowers. The pigs like to do their own gardening, and whatever
Oh,
seed comes out of their backside was also mixed in there from the prior
Mm.
year.
And well fertilized, yes.
I
Yeah,
think
the yields were pretty good.
I think diversity in forage is really important, and that's one thing we can't get down here. Not we can, but it's not the diversity that I would prefer my chickens to have.
And you would almost have to import soil, right? Because of how much sand you have down there.
Oh yeah, I did. Somebody asked me one time about what it was like gardening in Florida. I said it's like trying to grow vegetables in a tray of marbles because
Yeah.
there is no organic matter.
We have a pretty good top layer of soil, and then it immediately switches over to red clay and then fieldstone below that, which we found out every time we wanted to put a fence post in. And underneath that is the gray clay, and then it goes back to red clay and some more rock.
I got
Mm.
nothing. We've got 28 feet of what's called glacial tillage. It's just rubble straight down to the bedrock. And I've got about a 32nd of an inch of topsoil. So thus my rows started out as hugel cultures and have broken down over the years, and the chickens are there to put fertility into the soil. When I shovel out the coop, that all goes into the compost and gets broken down and becomes another planting row or compost for an existing row. We do
Well,
have a lot of fertility coming out the back ends of our birds. Let's capture that safely and responsibly. Don't want to get chickenosis.
we're uphill from the river on a flat plateau. And so the water, which we've been getting so much rain over the last several years, it just sits on top and drains off however it can. So when we first moved to this property, we had a little bit of a slope to a creek, but we had slushy spots where the ground just almost never dried out and you're
Mhm.
sank 4 or 5 inches into the ground. So we installed a lot of drainage. But I did recently add ducks to take care of the last sinkhole so somebody could have fun with it.
Utilize your resources.
Those Muscovy ducks have been a trip. They already are acting like I didn't expect the intelligence that they're showing actually,
Oh,
because
they're
when
smart.
we're gonna put them to bed, if I take a bucket of feed, they follow me. I don't have to hurt them. I don't have to fight with them. They're getting friendlier by the day. I've yet to eat one though. I'm excited to eat our first one. That was the whole reason of getting them.
I've heard it's very much like goose.
That's what I'm hoping for.
We do appreciate all our listeners here on the Poultry Keepers podcast. You keep us on our toes, and hopefully, we're able to share information with you that you can apply to your situation. Just keep listening. We'll keep talking chicken. So until next week, you guys enjoy your bird, and we will talk to you later.